You bought a gorgeous lavender plant. It smelled incredible at the nursery. You pictured your garden buzzing with bees, that silvery purple haze swaying in the breeze, maybe even a little homemade lavender oil down the line. And then it died. Or worse, it just sat there. No flowers, no fragrance, just a sad, woody, gray little ghost of what you imagined. Here's the thing nobody tells you. Lavender isn't hard to grow, it's just easy to kill in ways that feel completely counterintuitive. Most of the things you instinctively want to do to help your lavender are the exact things slowly killing it. You're being too kind to a plant that wants to be ignored. So in the next few minutes, I'm going to walk you through the 7 planting mistakes that quietly sabotage lavender and exactly what to do instead. By the end of this video, you'll understand lavender better than 90% of people who buy it. Not just what to do, but why, so you can stop guessing and start growing the kind of lavender that makes your neighbors stop and ask what your secret is. Let's get into it. 1. You're treating it like a houseplant that loves rich soil. Let's start with the single biggest reason lavender dies, and it's going to feel backwards. You're giving it soil that's too good. When most people plant something, they dig a hole, drop in a fat scoop of rich black compost, maybe some bagged premium potting mix loaded with peat and fertilizer, and they pat it down feeling proud. With almost any vegetable or flower, that's great advice. With lavender, you've just dug its grave. Lavender evolved on the dry, rocky, sun-scorched hillsides of the Mediterranean. We're talking gravelly, chalky, nutrient-poor ground where most plants would starve. That's not a hardship for lavender, that's home. Rich, moisture-retentive soil holds water around the roots, and lavender roots absolutely cannot tolerate sitting in dampness. The roots suffocate, rot sets in, and by the time you notice the gray leaves and droopy stems, it's usually too late. So here's what you do instead. You want lean, fast-draining, slightly gritty soil. If your native soil is heavy clay, and a lot of you have clay, you need to fix that before the plant goes in the ground. Mix in plenty of coarse sand, fine gravel, or horticultural grit, not play sand, which compacts. You want the gritty, sharp stuff. A good target is something like 1 part grit to 2 parts soil, sometimes even 50-50 if your clay is brutal. And forget the compost dump. A tiny bit of well-rotted material is fine, but you are not building a luxury bed here. Think dry hillside, not vegetable patch. The poorer the soil, the more your lavender concentrates its energy into those intense oils and flowers instead of producing soft, leafy green growth. Lean soil is the secret to strong fragrance. Remember that because it's going to come up again. 2. You're planting it where the sun doesn't truly reach. Now let's talk about light, because this is where a lot of well-meaning gardeners fool themselves. You walk around your yard, you find a spot that gets pretty good sun, you tell yourself it's bright enough, and you plant your lavender there. A few hours of morning light, a bit of dappled shade in the afternoon, near a fence or under the edge of a tree, it seems sunny enough, but lavender doesn't deal in sunny enough. This plant wants full, unfiltered, punishing sun. A minimum of 6 hours of direct light per day, and honestly, 8 or more is where it really thrives. In its native range, lavender bakes all day long, and it's that intensity that triggers heavy flowering and that potent oil production you actually bought it for. Put it in partial shade and it does something disappointing. It survives, but it stretches. It gets leggy and sparse, reaching toward whatever light it can find. The flowers come thin and pale, if they come at all, and the plant becomes floppy and weak. You end up with a lavender-shaped plant that has none of the lavender magic. So before you plant, actually watch your space. Don't guess, observe. Track where the sun lands across a full day. Morning sun, afternoon sun, and especially that hot midday light. The spot you want is the one that other plants might complain about. South-facing is ideal in most climates. Up against a light-colored wall or stone that radiates heat back at the plant, even better, that's a lavender paradise. And if you're growing in a pot, this is actually your advantage. You can chase the sun. Move that container to the brightest, hottest corner of your patio or balcony and let it soak. Don't tuck lavender into a cozy, shady nook to be polite. Lavender doesn't want cozy. Lavender wants to sunbathe until it sweats fragrance. 3. You're loving it to death with the watering can. This one is the silent killer, and it's almost always done out of pure affection. You see your lavender, it looks a little dry, the soil's pale on top, the leaves seem thirsty, so you water it. And then you water it again in a couple of days because, hey, plants need water, right? And slowly, lovingly, you drown it. Lavender is a drought-loving plant, and overwatering is the #1 way home gardeners kill it. Those Mediterranean roots are built for dry spells. They want to dry out completely between drinks. When you keep the soil consistently moist, which feels like good parenting, you create exactly the waterlogged conditions that cause root rot. And here's the cruel twist. The early symptoms of overwatering look almost identical to underwatering. Yellowing, wilting, gray foliage. So people see those signs, panic, and water more, accelerating the death spiral. So let's reset your watering instincts entirely. For a newly planted lavender, yes, water it regularly for the first few weeks while it establishes its roots. That part's real. But once it's settled in, you back off dramatically. An established lavender in the ground often needs watering only every couple of weeks during dry stretches, and in many climates, rainfall alone is enough. Deep, infrequent soakings beat little frequent sips every single time, because deep watering encourages roots to grow down strong instead of staying shallow and needy. The test is simple. Stick your finger a couple of inches into the soil. If there's any moisture down there, walk away. Only water when it's dry well below the surface, and always water at the base, never over the foliage, and ideally in the morning so any splash dries off fast. For potted lavender, make absolutely sure there are drainage holes, and never, ever let it sit in a saucer of standing water. When in doubt with lavender, don't water. Neglect is a love language here. 4. You're feeding it like it's hungry when it isn't. Closely related to the soil mistake and just as well-intentioned is the urge to feed your lavender. You want it lush, you want it big and full and bursting with blooms, so you reach for the fertilizer, maybe a nice nitrogen-rich feed, and you give it a generous boost. Big mistake. Lavender is one of those rare plants that genuinely thrives on neglect when it comes to nutrients. Remember those poor, rocky Mediterranean hillsides? There's no one out there sprinkling plant food. Lavender is adapted to dry conditions, and when you over-fertilize it, especially with high nitrogen products, you get a very specific and frustrating result. The plant explodes with soft, leafy green growth and produces hardly any flowers. All that energy goes into floppy foliage instead of the blooms and oils you actually want. The growth also tends to be weak and disease-prone, and that fragrance you love, it fades because rich feeding dilutes the very oils that make lavender lavender. So what should you do? In most cases, genuinely nothing. If your soil is reasonable, lavender needs no regular feeding at all. If you really feel the need to give it something, say it's in a pot where nutrients deplete over time, go with a very light hand. A thin sprinkle of compost in spring or a low-strength feed once at the start of the growing season is plenty. There's no shame in doing absolutely nothing. The mindset shift here is the same one running through this entire video. Stop trying to pamper this plant. The harder lavender has to work, the more it rewards you. A little struggle is exactly what produces those intense purple spikes and that knockout scent. Kill it with kindness, and you'll quite literally kill it.
Number 5. You crammed it in too tight with no room to breathe. Let's talk about spacing and airflow, because this is a mistake that doesn't show up right away, it shows up later, usually as disease, and by then you've forgotten you caused it. When you're planting, those little nursery lavenders look so small and innocent, so you tuck them in close together to fill the bed, or you crowd them up against other plants for that lush, packed border look. It feels efficient. It looks great on planting day. But lavender hates crowding for one critical reason: airflow. Lavender depends on air circulating freely around its stems and foliage to stay dry and healthy. When plants are jammed together, air gets trapped, humidity builds up in that dense canopy, moisture lingers on the leaves after rain or morning dew, and you create the perfect breeding ground for fungal diseases. We're talking root rot creeping up, and that grayish, powdery dieback in the center of the plant that so many people struggle with. Poor airflow is often the hidden culprit behind a lavender that mysteriously rots out from the middle. So give your plants real, generous space. As a rule, space lavender plants roughly the same distance apart as their expected mature width. For many common varieties, that's somewhere around 12 to 36 inches depending on the type, so check the label for your specific variety. It'll look a little sparse and awkward at first, with bare gaps between the plants. Resist the urge to fill those gaps. That breathing room is doing essential work. This matters for placement too. Don't plant lavender hard up against a solid fence or wall where air stagnates, and don't bury it in the middle of a dense, jungly border. Give it an open, breezy, exposed position. Lavender genuinely loves a bit of wind moving through it. Good airflow keeps the foliage dry, keeps disease away, and as a bonus, sends that incredible fragrance drifting across your whole garden. Number 6. You planted at the wrong time and buried the crown. This is really two connected timing and technique mistakes, and together they ruin a shocking number of perfectly healthy plants right at the starting line. First, timing. A lot of people buy lavender on impulse. It's blooming beautifully at the garden center. They grab it and they plant it whenever they happen to get home, which is sometimes the hottest week of summer or the edge of a cold snap. Lavender needs time to establish its roots before it faces extreme stress. Planting in the brutal peak of summer heat means the young plant is trying to root and survive scorching conditions at the same time, and it often loses. Planting too late in fall, in colder climates, means it goes into winter without an established root system and gets killed by the cold and wet. The sweet spot for planting lavender is spring, once the danger of hard frost has passed and the soil is warming up. That gives it a full, gentle season to settle in and toughen up before it has to face any real extremes. In milder, warmer regions, early fall planting can also work beautifully because the roots establish over a mild winter. The goal is the same either way. Plant when conditions are kind so the roots are strong before conditions turn harsh. Now, the technique part, and this is huge. When you set lavender in the ground, you must not bury the crown. That's the base of the plant where the stems meet the roots. People dig a hole, drop the plant in, and then mound soil up around the stem to hold it steady, or they plant it too deep so the crown sits below the soil line. That trapped moisture against the crown is a direct invitation for rot. Lavender wants its crown sitting right at or even very slightly above the soil surface, high and dry. Plant it shallow, keep that base exposed to the air, and if anything, mound the soil so water drains away from the center of the plant rather than pooling against it. A top dressing of gravel or grit around the base, not damp mulch, keeps the crown dry and finishes the job perfectly. Number 7. You never pruned it, so it turned into a woody skeleton. Here's the mistake that doesn't kill lavender quickly, but slowly turns it into something ugly and unproductive over a few short years. You never prune it. Or you're scared to, so you barely touch it. Lavender is technically a small shrub, and like many shrubs, it has a strong tendency to go woody. If you leave it alone year after year, the base becomes a thick, gnarled, bare tangle of brittle wood, and all the soft green growth and flowers retreat to the very tips of long, floppy, leggy stems. The center splits open and dies out. You end up with a sprawling, hollow, half-dead plant that produces fewer and fewer flowers each season and looks like a sad little bush of twigs. And here's the painful part. Once lavender has gone fully woody, it usually won't regrow from that old bare wood. You can't fix it by then, so prevention is everything. The solution is to prune regularly and prune correctly starting early in the plant's life. The golden rule of lavender pruning is to never cut back into the old, hard, brown, woody growth. Always cut within the softer, green-tinged growth above it. Each year, after the plant has flowered, you give it a good trim, shaping it into a tidy, rounded mound and removing the spent flower stalks along with a chunk of the green growth, taking off something like a third of the plant. This keeps it compact, bushy, dense, and constantly producing fresh growth and abundant blooms. A light shaping trim in spring and a proper cutback after flowering will keep your lavender looking gorgeous and living far longer, often many years instead of dying out after 2 or 3. Don't be timid about it. A well-pruned lavender is a happy, healthy, generous lavender. The shears are your friend, and that fear of cutting too much causes far more damage than a confident trim. Overall, notice the theme running through every single one of these. Lavender doesn't want to be coddled. It's a tough, scrappy, sun-loving survivor that performs best when you stop fussing and let it do its thing. Almost every way we kill lavender comes from being too generous. Too much water, too much food, too much rich soil, too much shelter, too much hesitation with the shears. Once you embrace a little tough love, this plant becomes one of the most rewarding, low-maintenance, beautiful things you can grow. Pollinators will swarm it. The scent will follow you around the garden, and it'll come back stronger year after year. If this helped you finally understand your lavender, do me a quick favor and hit that like button, because it genuinely helps the channel reach more gardeners who are quietly killing their plants with kindness. And if you want more straight-talking, no-nonsense gardening guides exactly like this one, subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss what's coming next. Your garden and your future thriving, fragrant lavender will thank you. Now, get out there and grow something beautiful. I'll see you in the next one.